Okay, hello, welcome back to Simply Bored. So this time I'm still here, Vandy Ezel, but next time, 90% sure, Dev will be back. So expect another video, but this time from Dev somewhere in the near future, probably this week. So let's get this started. So today we have a Royal Paladin Blaster budget deck profile. This deck is extremely cheap. If you SP out everything but Blaster Blade, it's going to be like $18. And it's really good because I made this once because I had no other resources to build the actual deck. So I shoved Blaster Blade in there, I shoved a few extra cards in there, and whoop-de-doo, surprisingly it worked out. So this deck is extremely good, and yeah, let's just go ahead and get started. First off, the starting Vanguard, Gleim. When Royal Paladin, draw a card. Simple, I guess, one place, draw one, useful card, and then when the order comes out, get an extra like 5k shield if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 1 or greater. So that's useful. Helps going second, which is actually not that good in this meta unless you're having a force deck. But even then, with all the cards that, well, yeah, actually it is better to go second with the force deck because if you're playing another force deck, most of them have effects that only work against if your opponent's at grade 3. So actually it does help going second by that and by this. So yeah, really useful card. Triggers. We run 4 draws, Margol, 4 crit, Flogel, another 4 crit of Epona, and then finally 4 heal Elaine. So, yeah, pretty much just did the standard 8 crit, 4 draw, 4 heal thing. This deck does actually need to draw, because this deck has a I'm not going to say massive, but like has a slight hand problem, so it definitely needs that draw, and then the crits are there because I would put more draws, but draw PG is way too expensive. Way too expensive. Now on to the grade 1s. 1 copy of Lion Mane Stallion. If you have 4 more rear guards, this unit gets plus 3k till end of turn. For the record, if you're wondering why that says 1, this deck is almost a complete replica of the deck I built before. There's only 1 card that's different, but it's mostly a complete replica of the deck I built with Blaster Blade, and at that point, this card was at 1, so yeah. So pretty much just plus 3k if you have 4 more rear guards. This deck is easy to get that. That is almost a guaranteed thing. If you don't have 4 more rear guards, that most likely means your whole hand is triggers and you don't want to call any of them down. But even then, it's a 10k booster, 10k rear guard, basically a grade 2, which is really useful. So, I guess 1 copy. 3 copies of Pluck Enchanter, 7k base, auto rear guard circle once per turn. When your Blaster Blade is placed on rear guard, when it's placed on anywhere, soul charge 1, and if you have no face-up cards and damage, counter charge 1. So, Blaster Blade skill, if you well, actually, I'll go over it later when I actually get to the card. But yeah, that's pretty much a free counter charge if you can pull it off, and this deck does counter blast a lot. And it soul charges. This deck does have a minor soul problem, so that's actually really helpful. So then, all around, really useful card. So, 3 copies. If you want to boost this up to 4 and get rid of Lion Mane, I completely understand. I just, like I said before, I built this with the resources I had. And then finally, the PG Indestructible Knight Arena. So when placed, discard a hand card and choose one of your units until the end of the battle can't be hit. And then when placed, draw a card and discard 1. Classic PG, but then it has like the extra effect of drawing a card if you discard 1, which makes it not that bad if you have to write it. It's still bad, but it's not that bad now. And then finally, 4 copies of Knight of Exemplary Sword, Lucas. Auto rearguard circle. When your grade 3 or greater is placed, put this unit to soul, draw a card, and call your card from your hand to rearguard circle. I always remember the draw skill. The draw part of the skill, I always remember. The call a card from hand to rearguard, I never remember. Literally, that is the one thing I never remembered. I've actually pulled off its full skill twice, but I literally never remember that call a card from hand to rearguard circle. I'm only focused on the draw. That is the sole reason why I put it in here. I didn't even know it had that effect till I got the card. But yeah, pretty much just get a free hand card and draw one. And call a card. So you get an extra unit. A lot of these cards have effects like when they're placed. So that's actually really useful because I'm placing one unit, placing a grade 3, shoving this thing in soul, getting an extra soul card, drawing a card, and then calling whatever you drew or whatever something, and then it's useful. Now to grade 2s. 3 copies of Conjurer of Mithril. Auto rearguard circle when placed from hand, counterblast 1, soul blast 1, search your deck for up to 1 grade 2, call it to rearguard circle, and shuffle your deck. So pretty much what this does is you get a free grade 2. That's useful because Pluck Enchanter says when Blaster Blade is placed, never when from where. So as long as you place Mithril from hand, let's just say you have 1 counterblast left and then a good amount of soul left, what you gotta do is you place Mithril, well after you have Pluck Enchanter, you place Mithril, counterblast that last counterblast, soul blast 1, call Blaster Blade from deck. Skill of Pluck Enchanter, because you can resolve either Pluck Enchanter or Blaster Blade first. Skill of Pluck, countercharge 1 since you have no more face-up damage, and soul charge 1. Skill of Blaster Blade, counterblast 1, soul blast that card, retire opponent's rearguard. That's pretty useful because that's essentially a good combo right there, and I kind of just told you Blaster Blade skill. But it's useful because it kind of makes it free, and you get 2 rearguards for the price of 1, and you can nuke an opponent's rearguard, and then you get an extra, and well, yeah, you can just nuke opponent's rearguard, and the most you're paying for it is actually a soul. So yeah, that's pretty useful. So 3 copies. 4 copies of Galatine. My excuse for this, because like I said, he's not in the actual build, he was there because resources wise. My excuse for this one is, I guess, defensive. Because there are times where this deck rarely lost when I build it, but like there were the times that the defensive was the problem. So having Galatine in there as a 10k shield was really helpful at the time. So Galatine's gotta be there, I guess. Yeah. Now on to Blaster Blade, the boy I've been talking about for so long, and the slight reason why this deck was built. So continuous Vanguard Circle. If you have 4 more rear guards, it gets +1 crit. Also, you run 4 copies of this. So pretty much only a Vanguard skill, but it gets an extra crit if you have 4 more rear guards, which this deck can do easily. So don't be afraid to like call out your hand because that thing's gonna benefit from it so much. And then auto Vanguard or rearguard circle, when placed, counterblast 1, soul blast 1, choose one of your opponent's rearguards in the front row, retire it. Like I said earlier, call Mithril, skill, call Blaster Blade after Pluck Enchanter's out, kill a rearguard, soul charge, countercharge. That simple. So 2 rearguards for the price of 1, and you get to nuke an opponent's 1, which is really useful because you hurt your opponent's field, and then you get to advance your field. And because, technically speaking, that's 1 less card from hand that you have to call, that's really useful, especially since it's a 10k base, which means it can hit anything. So yeah, 4 copies. Whoops, you weren't supposed to see that. Next up is 2 copies of Powerful Sage Baron. Let me make sure. Yeah, 2 copies. So then, auto Vanguard Rearguard Circle. When another rearguard is placed, this unit gets +3k till end of turn. And then act Rearguard Circle once per turn. If your damage zone has more cards than your opponent's, Soul Blast 1 and discard 1, draw 2. This, yeah, that's the like where the soul problem ensues. So that 1 Pluck Enchanter and then the 4 Experimenting Sword Lucas is really useful because that just makes like the soul less costly, and you don't necessarily need soul, but you need specific soul, like very certain, and we'll go over that with the next card. And then the free draw 2, which is useful because yeah, you lose a hand card, but you're effectively restocking your hand, which is useful because it has options. Always, if your hand is full of triggers, always discard Margol. If Margol isn't there, discard Flogolepana. If neither of them are there, discard Elaine. But yeah, it's pretty much telling you what to discard. And then the +3k, I use it, but like, I always fucked up the timing. I mean, the 3k is important, but like, you don't normally use this thing to attack. This is normally the thing that you would call behind the Vanguard Circle just to get the draws off. But yeah, 2 copies. Now onto the card that this deck was slightly built for. Okay, so a little backstory before I continue. This deck, like I said before, was built from extra resources. But originally, this deck was supposed to be based around this card right here because my friend wanted me to build a deck for this. And in my personal opinion, it didn't fit in any deck that was remotely related to anything else like Blasters or Alfred, since Alfred's technically have an archetype, and Alt Miles. So, well, maybe Alt Miles. No, definitely not Alt Miles. So then, this would be a card that you build your own deck from. And I did, but then half the cards didn't come, which means I had to improvise, and that's where the Blaster Blade, the Galatine, the Pluck Enchanter, and yeah, those 3 just came from. So now this guy. Deck Horus Knight Heinjinst. Skill, auto Vanguard Circle, also 4 copies. Once per turn, when it attacks, Soul Blast 2 grade 3s, call any number of cards from your hand to rearguard. Those units get +10 until end of turn. So that's really good already. But then if you have 3 or more rearguards, when your opponent would call units from the hand to the Guardian Circle this turn, he or she must call 2 or more at the same time. That's useful, because like say you only have one hand card and you have 2 rear guards, attack with this thing, Soul Blast 2 grade 3s, obviously, call that card from hand, now that unit gets plus 3 10k, and even though you only called 1, your opponent still has to go 2 more hand cards because you have 3 rear guards, which is useful, because that means it's like your opponent, even if they have a PG and they can stop all the attacks with just 2 hand cards each, now they actually have to call extra cards to Guardian Circle, because otherwise it will still go through, if it would go through in the first place, which is really neat. And it's also where the Soul problem ensues, because you have to have 2 grade 3s in Soul, so which is why Lucas and Pluck Enchanter Soul Charging is really useful. Never Soul Blast the grade 3s unless you have another one in Soul. But even then, never Soul Blast it if you're that close to Hydrants, and you will only have 2 in Soul if you were to ride it. Do not Soul Blast them and keep a Hydrant in hand at all time, unless you have to write it, but 4 copies. And finally, Taintless Feather Dragon at 4 copies. So skill, auto, Vanguard, or Rearguard Circle, when placed, counterblast 1, choose a column, call up to 2 cards from your hand to that column's Rearguard Circle, and this unit gets plus 5k till end of turn. If you call 2 cards, draw 1. That's useful, because it gets plus 5k automatically. If I'm correct, you do not have to call just to get the 5k, you can just counterblast to get it. And then, if you did call 2 cards, exactly 2, you get to draw 1, so you're effectively cutting the cost in half, and you're getting a 5k out of it. So that's a pretty good balance. The 5k it's not the best, because it could be better, but the 5k really helpful because it can just hit numbers, so it just forces an extra guard out, but it's mainly there for like the draw. It's also the card you would mainly ride. You would mainly ride this thing and then go into Hydrants later, but mainly ride this till you get to the Hydrant soul number. And now to the gifts. 5 copies of Imaginary Gift Force. When acquired, put this marker on the Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, and this unit, and the unit on it gets plus 10k to end of during the turn. I cannot read today. So and the effect stack. So pretty much plus 10 can be plus 20, can be plus 30. How I normally play the deck is I'll go right into Taintless. Well, I'm just going to say like my basic normal hand. Ride Taintless, get a Force Gift. I normally put it on one of the 2 front or rear guards. Then I ride another Taintless. And then I do it again on the but this time on the opposite rear guard circle. Normally for some reason I go left to right. So then it would be left rear guard circle gets a force, then right rear guard circle gets a force. And then finally when I ride into Hydrants, I get a force on the Vanguard. So pretty much the Vanguard's prioritized last because all the rear guards are going to get the plus 10k and they just need to hit for those numbers to put pressure later on. So now they kind of all have pressure, and when you do Hydrant skill, all of them are going to have a lot more pressure. So then really just go for that play. I mean, if you play differently, that's fine. That's just how I normally do that. And then Imaginary Gift, Force 2, 3 copies, the standard when it's whatever unit circle this is on, that unit becomes, the unit's critical becomes plus 2. I mean, not plus 2, becomes 2. But you would not use this in this deck necessarily. This deck can quote-unquote power stack, but at the same time it can't. Like, when you get to Hydrants, this is going to be deadly if your opponent's at 4, because they're just going to be rushed for huge numbers. But if you're not on Hydrants, your numbers are going to be very small. I would suggest, like, just using Force 1. Only use this if you're trying to kill your opponent quickly. Like, use it if they're at 4 damage before they get to grade 3 and you're at grade 3. Only use that if they're at 4 damage, because then you can just push for right away. But either way, just only use the Force 1, really. Well, that was the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell Dev in the comments what you want from what more deck profiles do you want. And he'll be back probably later this week. So, bye.